RETINA.
Hello everyone, Retina Prime feeling fine, and welcome to this relaunched Retina podcast in our very first episode. We're going to be discussing the future of survival horror in general, but I felt this time we needed more than just me and a few others. I thought it was time we expanded the Retina Collective, and we have two new people joining us. First up, we have a very good friend of mine. She's an amazing animator, an amazing streamer, very lovely lady, and I'm sure she's very excited today to be dealing with the 24th anniversary of Code Veronica. It is Lady Ashford. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Everything okay with you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to it. Really excited.
Excellent. I'm sure you're happy about the 24th anniversary today as well.
It is. It's perfect timing. My favourite game. Happy birthday, Code Veronica.
Yeah, it's gonna be incredible. Let's meet your teammate. So we also have one other person joining us on the Retina Collective. They're a very good member of the Resident Evil community. They've always had a great presence on Twitter and other socials. Very lovely person, great knowledge of survival horror and Resident Evil in general, and an all-round good egg. It is our very own man from the mountain times. It is Ruletime. Welcome, Ruletime.
Hello.
Good to
Hi.
have you here.
glad
Everything
to
good
be
where
here.
you're up in the mountains?
I'm very happy. It's snowing today, so I'm actually but I'm pretty happy. This is my first experience really kind of being on like a big, like branching out off of my own little thing that I've made in my corner. So pretty happy to be here at the moment.
Excellent.
And
good to see you home in the
Code
RPD
Veronica.
as well.
Oh yeah. I had to set up my office. That's why it took me a while.
Yeah, looks like you
Yeah,
missed a
it's
few
hectic
books.
out there.
Yeah, missed a few books on the floor by the looks of it. Need a better clean.
I'm right in front of the door, so hopefully Leon doesn't mind.
He'll be too busy with his headset if it's anything like Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yeah. Or maybe he'll randomly find a rocket launcher to pull out, like in the movie.
Yeah, maybe he will. Okay, so thank you both for joining us, and obviously welcome as part of the Retina brand. It's good to have you both part of this. And obviously this is our very first relaunch of the Retina podcast, which we did attempt before, but I think it's time, since we have our two newest team members, that we have a new discussion and begin this as a new start and discuss the future of survival horror in general. Because we're obviously not only Resident Evil fans, obviously many of us very long time ones, I mean myself since 1996. Lady Ashford, you've been a huge fan for a long time, and obviously because of your namesake you've always been a huge fan of Code Veronica as well. And Ruletime, I know you've I know you've been a huge fan of Resident Evil, but also gaming in general with your love of Zelda and other franchises as well.
Oh yeah, I love this series. This is the first series that got me into gaming at all. Was Resident Evil.
Excellent.
Resident Evil 2 in particular, on the PS1.
Great choice. Excellent.
No, the
Most
remake
wonderful for
actually.
me.
I'm just kidding.
No
I don't think
surprise.
so.
Excellent. So, obviously touching upon the current state of survival horror in general, the last time I spoke on the future of Resident Evil, we didn't even have the announcement for Resident Evil 4 remake yet. We were still coming off the PTSD of having the Resident Evil Netflix series dropped on us, and Death Island hadn't even been announced either. So a lot has changed since I had this kind of discussion with any other content creators. So, in general, would you say that how do you feel that the direction of Resident Evil and survival horror in general has been since then? What have you liked most in the last couple of years? So I put this to you first, Lady Ashford. What do you reckon?
Oh, you're good. Go for it, lady. Ladies first.
Sounds like Ruletime wanted to go first there.
Yeah,
Um,
you're good.
I think in particular, it's mainly has been so much around remakes. I mean, the story seems to be. I just remember the days when you would have a new game. It would be quite a lot of game like involvement, and then I think a lot of the games now are really focusing on the remakes with like things like Dead Space remakes, obviously all Resident Evil remakes, and now Silent Hill remakes. Which is also great. I think it's wonderful to go back to revamp the older games for of the fans now. Particularly, Code Veronica was my first game that I ever played. So I'm still a bit bitter that they haven't quite remade that one yet. But you know, one day.
They just skipped it. They're like, we'll go from 3 to 4.
Oh, I was so happy and so sad when they announced Resident Evil 4
this will
remake.
make you happy.
Oh wow. Sorry, I got my
I just got the other one too. Oh, that's right. You showed us
I
that.
got my guns. Yeah.
Did you guys?
Yeah.
Sorry, not to get off track, but did you guys know that they actually have like a music box for Code Veronica?
Yeah,
You said that last time.
There was a limited edition one that was released as part of the initial run many years ago, and you can't get it cheap anymore. I mean, you're looking at hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars just to get hold of that now. So I think that's why me and Lady Ashford especially are secretly hoping for a remake, because maybe they might release a new music box that's cheap again.
Oh, that would be
I swear
so
the collector's
cool.
edition would be cheaper, a Code Veronica remake, that would be actually buying that friggin' music box on its own.
I just want a Steve statue.
Steve
Just
statue.
kidding.
The least likely character to ever be made as a statue, up there with Tofu and Hunk.
Yeah.
You'll get your
Steve is
Steve
the
statue
least-
when I get an Alfred statue.
That's an Alfred statue.
I could have asked for a 3D printed Hunk Tofu statue. That'd be much easier to do.
That'd be
With
so cool. I would love that.
Yeah. So, Ruletime, just coming back to you as well, your thoughts on the state of survival horror gaming in general, not just Resident Evil, but your thoughts on how the direction of survival horror in general is going. What do you feel it's been like for the last couple of years?
I think it's been great, actually. I mean, to be honest, it's always been really good because of the indie scene. Like they keep it alive, even when they're like AAA games kind of fail. But in terms of Resident Evil and where it's at right now, like it's great. The remakes have been, in my opinion, pretty great. I know we've had one bad egg that people would consider, but in terms of the quality of it, I think it's amazing. There was a time, what I like to call like the dark times of Capcom, in between Resident Evil 6 and 7. I don't know if you guys remember that, but like there was like a time I think they were just gonna stop making Resident Evil games, and then eventually they turned it around. They released Resident Evil Revelations, and then 7, and now it seems like we're just like eating really good as fans.
Yeah, I would agree with you both. It has been an interesting time, especially, I mean, obviously in the case of Resident Evil, we have seemed to have fallen into a pattern now. So since Resident Evil 7 was released in 2017, was it, or 16? Correct me if I'm wrong. I keep getting that date mixed up. Okay.
2017 is when
17,
Resident
that's
7
what I
came
thought.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was around that time. So 2017, we've had Resident Evil 7, and then following on, we had 2 remakes, and then we had another main entry in Village, and then we've moved on to Resident Evil 4. And if that pattern holds, we should be due another remake. But I think because of the way the plot is that they're going forward, really, 9 should be the main focus next. But if Capcom are going to keep going for the, like, where's the money for them, and where's the big money for them, where's the kind of where they can keep continuing what they're doing, 5 is probably the most likely scenario. But obviously myself and obviously Lady Ashford, you'd probably agree with me on this one, is that Code Veronica does need that treatment as well. I mean, it's a cult classic in a way, but it's always been one of those ones
The Moths.
Screw the Moths. Apart from that, apart from the Moths and the Fire Extinguisher, I reckon it does need that fresh audience, but it still holds a place in our hearts. I mean, obviously for yourself and for me as well. It was one of the few ones I played originally that didn't require any cheating as well. So
it'll always hold. I'm very biased, obviously. It'll always hold a special place in my heart because it was the first one that I played. I loved it. That's what brought me into Resident Evil. Played Code Veronica, and then I went back, played the others, loved them too. So just because of that, it'll always be there at the top of my list. I do hope they remake it. I keep thinking to myself, the longer that they leave it, then the better the graphics and quality will be. So, just keep waiting. I really hope they do remake it. But I think the other thing that I'd be interested in is Revelations 3. Throw that out there.
Oh, that'd actually be a great one.
I'm
Yeah.
really intrigued of the story. I hope they haven't kind of ended Natalia's story or Alex's story. I hope there's more there.
I don't think they, they just kind of left that on the floor. And
Mm.
there was I remember before Village came out, they were like, with Mother Miranda, there was that whole speculation that like she was actually the bad guy from Revelations 2. And I was like, that is an interesting thought. I actually really like that. But it didn't happen.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of theories going on around Village when that first happened. I mean, at one point there was the talk of, I think it was it Cassandra or one of the other sisters? Apparently that was going to be Claire or something. There was talk of like some of the classic characters becoming... Yeah, Daniela. There was talk of Daniela.
Yeah!
Other kind of classic characters becoming bioweapons and basically, in a way, killing them off.
I thought Chris was going to be a bad guy.
That
you
was
guys think that he was going to be a villain?
That was a big bait and switch they pulled there. I mean, obviously we saw with the cover art with the wolf motif and the way they marketed it. It was a really big kind of subverting the audience, but then it just kind of became the whole kind of, no, he's still good, but he just basically has a very piss poor communications.
Yeah, poor
communications. Resident Evil Village isn't a cautionary tale about bioweapons. It's a cautionary tale to not let Chris talk to someone because he cannot communicate.
Dude, if you would have said something at the start of the game, we would have been like, I mean, I feel like it still would have worked, but it would have been like, dude, I don't hate you, Chris.
It would have been a case
in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
He could have probably, if he'd explained it a bit better, maybe the story might have still panned out the same, but then there wouldn't be that whole kind of what the hell's going on here? Why is he doing this and all that? But then again, if you flip it the other way, maybe Chris being more of a villain, or God forbid if they did what they did with the clone of Ada, or was it Carla in Resident Evil 6? Maybe it could have gone down that route again.
Yeah. Did you like Carla?
I've only played a bit of Leon's campaign in 6. I've never completed it.
Oh, you can't get through it? You can't?
It's not hard. It's just I don't have the attention span or the willpower to even finish that game. It's just way too big.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That's how I feel about Resident Evil 6 also. Like, I think I can get like maybe halfway through Leon's campaign and I'm like, I'm done. When he flies the freaking helicopter, that's like, that's it for me.
I mean, I enjoyed Leon's campaign. His was probably my favourite of the ones I tried. I tried Jake and I did try a bit of Chris, but Leon's was the one I committed the most time to, but even then I barely played 6 hours of it. Which,
I did play through all the campaigns, to be honest, but I just didn't play through that portion of it, Like, I just can't replay it, is the thing.
Yeah. Okay, so
except the Mercenaries mode. The Mercenaries mode in that game is actually good, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it was the first one they rebranded to the Raid mode as well, wasn't it? And then carried that on into Revelations 2, I believe it was.
Yeah.
It might have been Revelations that did that, I don't know. But I know that Revelations 6 and 2 all share the same.
How many things does Leon drive in that game? He drives I think a crane. He drives a helicopter, a freaking plane,
car.
It
car,
does feel like
and it crashes that.
Crashes that, yeah.
I mean, considering everything he's ever driven, it does feel like he's done like a scary version of Transport Tycoon. He's the one driving all the vehicles, and it's the reason the company's bankrupt.
Yeah.
You would never trust the guy to even ride a tricycle, and I think that's got to be next on the list. We've got to see him on a skateboard and crash that.
Yeah, who directed that game? Wasn't it someone that directed a DMC? I think that's what I heard. I don't know if that's true. But if that's the case, that would make a lot of sense to me. If that was the case, but
yeah,
dude, I'm just so glad they turned that ship around. Like, there was a time where when you said that you were a Resident Evil fan, people were like, looked at you weird and funny. You were like, oh, I'm a Resident Evil fan.
We were kind of in that kind of grey area of, we've had Resident Evil 6, we're coming to the end of the Paul W.S. Anderson films as well, which seemed to slowly get worse with the more jump cuts he put in every half second.
Yeah, just when you thought it couldn't get any more worse, they did.
I tried watching I watched a clip from Final Chapter, and I couldn't finish it. I watched 5 seconds of it and thought, God, I've not seen things jump this round except for a cat near a laser pen.
That's so weird. I've seen them all, but I can't even remember them. And then when people tell me like, oh, what about number 5 or whatever it is. I'm like, there were 5? There were that many? I like, honestly, it's such a blur, and I can't remember anything past the 3rd one, which I think was where I really just kind of turned off.
I can't watch
shame.
anything of the. I can't watch it past the first one.
I didn't realise there was 6 films, not 5. It was scary to realise.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. There's at least 5.
Yeah.
There's actually 6. What?
And supposedly
with the clones.
another one coming out that's not directed by Paul Wes Anderson, but
Yeah,
that's
I
going to
heard
be
that.
directed by, but financed by him. So I'm kind of like, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, just getting back to the future of Resident Evil itself. Obviously, you mentioned Lady Ashford, the Revelations 3 idea. I mean, do you reckon that's maybe the focus should be continuing with the Natalia kind of storyline, or do you reckon this is just another kind of Capcom's going to tease us with this and then drop it like they've done with many other plot points in the past?
I mean, don't know. It's only because I was sort of thinking we've had a few remakes, we've had a new entry in the series. Is it about time for another Revelations if you're sort of doing the 3? I don't know. I would really like them to carry on that story, but I don't particularly think Revelations and Revelations 2 really came after each other as such. They were their own entities. So they might not. It's just the main reason for wanting that, I think, was when you come to the villains, Capcom kind of have a habit of just discarding the villain straight away. The only one that sort of seemed to go on was Wesker after they brought him back in Code Veronica, and then kept him on for a bit longer. But then once he's gone, it just feels like, oh, who's the next throwaway villain? So in Revelations 2, it kind of gives you a bit of hope for actually the villain of Revelations 2 may come back.
It's just
I
the
like
irony of that.
Like
Is
more long-term villain.
The irony of that, though, is that with Revelations 2, it's another Wesker. So is it just?
It really is in Claire's campaign.
If you're going to use, is it just particularly just that last name they have to keep going? I mean, it just feels like they can't give anyone else a
Be
chance.
confused. Gotta be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Well, I feel the same way. Honestly, lady, I feel the exact same way. Yeah, with like, why not? Like the spin-off games are just as important as the mainline games.
Yeah, I was going to say though, you mentioned that it's spin-off games are just important, but when I looked at the at Resident Evil Net site the other day, it weirdly listed the Revelations games as main titles. So
they kind of are.
I think they are. They
yeah.
fit in the story. Same as Code Veronica. I'd say that's the main title, even though a lot of people disagree.
I've never
This
seen,
game's like so important
Wow.
to the story.
I mean, I've never seen like the Revelations games, Code Veronica, or even the Outbreak Files as spin-offs. I mean, to me, obviously, the spin-offs have mainly been like the Umbrella and Darkside Chronicles, and but I mean, I wish it as much as I want to Umbrella Corps, but then most people wish that didn't even exist.
Gun Survivors.
I wish it didn't. I wish it didn't. There are
Survivor as
people
well,
that like
good.
Umbrella Corps, but I'm definitely not one of them. I'm sorry.
No, I tried it. 10 minutes. And I lasted barely longer than the 7 minutes Wesker gives me in Resident Evil 5. That's how long I lasted.
Who do you think should be the protagonist for a potential Revelations 3?
Ooh.
A lot of people want to see Rebecca come back. A lot of people want to see Rebecca or potentially Sheva come back. And I can kind of see that if they set the events maybe from 5 to 6, perhaps. But who knows how that would go at the end of the day.
I would say that the idea of Rebecca coming back would be great, but because of the way the CGI films have portrayed her, it's kind of backed them into a corner a little bit, because she's always been portrayed as someone who's happier to work behind the scenes and not be in the field as much. I mean, with the exception of how Death Island got her to actually put herself in at the very last minute just so we could get that big 5-person team up. But in general, I think her being back in the field again, considering how she's dedicated her career to like academia and research and vaccine research, that kind of makes it a little harder to put her in. But maybe they could have a twist on it where she decides, you know what, I've had enough of being on the back burners, I want to get back on the front line.
That would be
to
interesting.
sort of, I guess, do it as she's an agent on the front line. They could always start it off as she's in a lab working and it gets infiltrated by someone and they break
and then
in and
maybe it
she
takes
has to
place
escape out.
in there.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
So we're following
something
the
like that. Just like Claire.
we're
Claire got
following
captured.
Yeah, so
She always gets captured.
So we're kind of following.
People Claire game thrown in prison.
Well, it's got to happen to
Demon
someone
villain.
other than Claire for a change. I mean, I can't think of a game where Claire hasn't been in prison at some point. Even on Death Island, she still ended up in a prison cell.
She did.
That's true. Like a second home.
Once voluntarily, second time forcibly. So twice in the same thing. That's quite worrying. It's like she's trying to double up.
Yeah, if you think about it, she's been to the police station behind me. You know, she's been to jails and prisons a lot throughout her lifespan in Resident Evil up to this point. So it's like, you know, maybe we should see her in like a tropical paradise or something like that. I don't know.
Maybe she finally makes it to Hawaii.
Yeah, to Dino Crisis or something.
They could adapt the Heavenly Island story.
That would be cool. That would be really cool. I think what I would like to see is Revelations 3 take place between 5 and 6, or, you know, don't even put those two there. Maybe do 6 to 7.
I think probably 6 to 7 would be a better one at this point, because Revelations 2 was set between 5 and 6, wasn't it? Yeah, because there was still mention of Piers and that, and Jill's kind of document detailing her kind of recovery and that. So I think that helps between 5 and 6 a little, but 6 and 7 still a bit of a grey area. The CGI films with Death Island and Vendetta have been mainly filling that gap. We haven't really had that with the games yet, so Revelation is a way to kind of fill it a little, and then whether they want to bring closure to the Alex Wesker story in that, with her consciousness being in Italia, or if they want to build up something else. I mean, there's the whole kind of the T-Abyss sample being out there with Jessica as well as still a plot point. There's so many plot points that have been generated but then never kind of fully used again. There's options out. Yeah.
That dude just disappeared after 6, man.
Yeah.
He just straight up disappeared after 6, and it's like, I feel like you could maybe bring him back somehow, you know?
You mean like Emperor Palpatine? Somehow he returns.
Yeah. Well, not Albert Wesker, his son,
Oh, thank
Jake.
God. Yeah. I mean, I still have to put up with the rumours that somehow he survived and you just see him paddling in the sea at the end of 5, but
He'll be like,
well, that's just a glitch in the sea texture, come on.
yeah, he didn't get blown up by a rocket launcher in a volcano. What are you talking about?
I mean, look, we've seen other creatures go down to much lesser things. We've seen what, like Nosferatu in Code Veronica, that just got stabbed. That didn't survive.
It did.
I'm sure 2 rockets to the face and a volcanic eruption can definitely finish him, or unless they go down the whole route of the Netflix series and make a clone of him or something.
No, if Wesker comes back, he's got to throw his glasses again. He's got to throw his sunglasses. He just has to.
I've got to argue that the cinematography and the style of 5 was definitely one of the things I loved most about that game. It's going to get a bit of flack for its AI, but you can't deny it. It's a very beautiful and very well shot game compared to its predecessors. That's when I started finding their artistic and visual style that was much more kind of heavy and more stylistic. Okay, it did give us the yellow filter, which was a pain, but
people call that the piss filter.
Yeah, I was probably diplomatic. I mean, I can't talk. I've got the piss filter as my light to my left right now.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys this. So if they don't do Revelations 3, do we think that they're going to just straight up move to 9? I think that'd be the focus right now.
Sorry, Lynch, go on.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I know there's probably more rumours or like hints at a Resi 5 remake. I think they're probably going to move to 9 first, and that'll be sort of second. I think so.
Yeah.
Or they could follow the trend. For me, sorry, and if you wanted to talk, Retina, I'll let you go.
Thank you. It was basically I get the whole. I mean, I mentioned before how the sequence of events has been. It's been main entry, 2 remakes, and then a main entry, and we're on our first remake. And then, in theory, a second remake could happen. Whether it's 5, Code Veronica, ideally, to help build up that story from 4, because really, I mean, 4, as good a game as it is, it doesn't really build up much towards 5 yet. It doesn't give us that much kind of. I mean, in the remake timeline, as it were, I mean, disregarding the 1 remake and what we know about the originals, for anyone who's only played the remakes of those, what do they know about Wesker at this point? He's just a guy who's a bit more suave with sunglasses, who has basically nicked a parasitic organism and wants to basically kill billions. That's it. That's the only thing we know about him at this point from that perspective. For us, that have played for a long time, we know him, and others might know him by reputation. But for others, I think Code Veronica or something else could be used to build up his mystique and his character a bit more.
I think so. He is very suave, by the way.
Yeah.
Go ahead, lady.
So one of the good things I think about Resi 5 was the relationship between him and Chris that had been building up throughout Code Veronica, and I think probably one of the reasons Chris goes on his steroids is because he's no match for Wesker in Code Veronica, and it's sort of, but like that's the brilliance of a long-living villain that can span extra games. It just builds that character growth. So I would agree that you build it up some more. Let's make 5 even better with actual backstory and the history with Chris and Wesker. That'd be my one.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing too. Next year, I mean, we're 24 years into Code Veronica now. Like, why not give us a
25th anniversary
game or something, and then move on to 9 after that?
Yeah.
I don't see why you couldn't at this point. Like, just. It gives the fans what they want, because if you guys remember back in the day, like, people were asking for Resident Evil 2 remake forever, and I was one of them. And then eventually it got confirmed with the "We Do It" shirt, and then we waited a long time to hear anything from that. So I'm just saying, like, this isn't the first time fans demanded a game.
Yeah, but didn't they, when they wanted Resi 2 and obviously it wasn't being made, didn't the fans actually start making it themselves? And then Capcom intervened at that point. Well, a similar thing just happened with Code Veronica. The fans started making Code Veronica. I saw the trailer for it and it looked amazing, and then Capcom stopped it. So
they sent the cease and desist on that and a Resident Evil 1 remake that somebody was doing as well.
Yeah, they were doing them both, weren't they?
Well,
So has the Resident Evil 1 remake been given a cease and desist then, or is that still ongoing? Because I haven't heard.
No, that one also got it. That one also got it. Yeah,
Wow.
They both got. I don't know if they got hit at the same time, but I remember seeing news articles saying that they both did at some point get a cease and desist.
I knew about the Code Veronica one.
Code Veronica. That I don't remember when that happened exactly, but it did. It did happen.
It was definitely. I would have remembered if both got hit at the same time, because I remember trying the fan remake of Code Veronica briefly, and weirdly it was very faithful to the original game, but there was a lot of good additions that they made. Well, obviously it was very kind of alpha, so a lot of the stuff was still in process of being built, but there's some good little extra bits, like 1 or 2 extra rooms, a few extra encounters you didn't expect, and some nice little kind of nods, like rain falling everywhere, some bits that look like they could be explored later if you unlock them. So fans did have a good grasp of how to make a remake good, while also adding more to it, like what we hoped with... we hoped for it with 2, 3 and 4 to be like the first Resident Evil's remake being pretty much the core of the game again, but with just expansions, maybe just the odd very subtle cut you wouldn't notice. But we've all got. I'm sure we've each got reasons to not really like the certain parts of the remakes as much. I mean, for me, obviously with 2, it's the scenarios. Weirdly, my problem with 4 was for me 4 got too long. Well, the main campaign did at least. I just thought it was far too bloated.
I feel the opposite way about that, to be honest with you, but that's also because I have a love for Resident Evil 4 as it is, and Leon's my boy.
Yeah, it's still a great game. I don't know. It's a fantastic
Those
game.
golden locks, my boy.
I mean, I did get confused with Leon's hair at some points, because in certain lights it was blonde, and other lights it was kind of brunettish, and then at some lights it was actually pitch black, so you couldn't tell what hair colour it was half the time. But
if you guys remember that whole, just going back to that for a second, with the cease and desist on Resident Evil 2 remake, the guys that made that, actually Capcom flew them out to Japan. Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it. And they're like, hey, we're actually working on a remake, and obviously they couldn't say it at the time. But I don't know if they did that for the Code Veronica peeps. So
I don't know.
No, I think I saw the channel there was a Discord channel for the Code Veronica creator, and there seemed to be a little bit of a kind of a bitterness towards Capcom, but I won't get into that so much. But there was a little bit of tension with that one. I get it. I mean, something you've worked hard on has been taken down, but the fact is you're dealing with an IP that belongs to someone else, and they have that right to say, look, we don't like the direction you're going with this. Can you please stop?
Yeah.
I mean,
Nintendo does that all the time, man.
Oh no, Nintendo's
It's too faithful to the game. Stop.
Yeah. Yes. Listen, you're gonna make something better than what we can make.
Just go over there, do your thing, but just don't make it yet. We'll do it over here. We'll make ours.
You know what though? That does show that remake and this one. And if anything, it just shows Capcom like, look, if you're not gonna do it, fans are gonna do it. We're gonna do it and give people what they want.
There's enough demand that the fans are making it, so.
Yeah, that's what made him pull the trigger, I'm sure, on Resident Evil 2 remake.
Yeah, so just coming back briefly to the future of the franchise in general. So obviously we've touched upon that. Obviously, Code Veronica, as of this time of recording, is on its 24th anniversary. It'll be its 25th anniversary this time next year. Obviously, the remakes so far from 2 to 4 have hinted at what's coming next. Like with 2, I think it was in the demo, there was a point where you got to the courtyard of the RPD, and if you went to a certain barricaded door, you could hear Nemesis saying "stars" in the background.
Oh, that's so cool!
Yeah, it's very subtle, but it's only in the demo. And if you go to, I think it's in 3's remake, there is a nod to parasitic infection in the final kind of lab in some of the documents as well. So that was your next clue.
That's awesome!
And then with 4, from what I remember, there's been various obvious hints.
You taught me something new. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now the thing with 4, that's a bit more harder because there's hints to various games in there. I mean 2 did have. I think it was 3 and 2 both had references to Outbreak files, but that was just because of the time they said.
It did. Yeah.
But the more awkward one is how 4 kind of makes references to other games. You've got references to obviously 2 and 3 prove it via the whole kind of outbreak of Raccoon City and that, which is a given. But then there is a reference to Operation Javier. Obviously, it's the way it's written. The way it's written in the report, it doesn't really make much reference to Javier himself or the T. Veronica virus or a bioweapon outbreak. It seems to sound more like just a deniable operation gone wrong, like the Special Forces unit. So maybe they've rewritten that, but given it a subtle nod.
Some people online are just like, "Oh, sorry, I cut you off. My bad."
No, it's all right. I don't know how to take that one because it is a subtle reference to the Dark Side Chronicles kind of extra mode and that, but it's not really a full-blown nod to Code Veronica as such. And then you've obviously got the reference to Resident Evil 5. I mean, there's a couple of those in there. I mean, Wesker's little quip about complete saturation of destroying the village for a start.
Huge references to it.
And then his little nods to taking Krauser's body at the end. I mean, obviously, I should say spoilers for this, but too late now. You've spoiled.
Too late.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't played it by now, I'd be surprised. But yeah, Separate Ways was a good addition to that particular game, and it did make some good world building in general. It's just this leaves this more up into the air of what to expect. I mean, it does hint subtly at Code Veronica in a way, and 5. So which they're going to go with? I mean, the safe bet would be 5 really, because what they're going to do. But then obviously there's the problem that we've touched upon earlier about where's the build of the story of this. We are still in the infancy of the plot for 5 at this point.
You know, and that's the thing. I've heard some people online be like, well, what if they just like shoehorn in the Code Veronica, like the exploit of like the story a little bit at the beginning of 5, and I'm like, well, you can't do that. You can't just do that and that's going to upset so many people, because then it's like, I'm just going to brush over the story of Code Veronica and just go to 5. Like, yeah, I do agree on that. That should not be the case. Some people are like, no, I just want 5.
The fact is, though, that Code Veronica doesn't just have a reach into 5, it still has long-reaching consequences in some ways. I mean, obviously, you'll know this from the from like gameplay of Resident Evil 6 as well. I mean, the T. Veronica virus was kind of pivotal to the development of the C virus later on as well, and that's, if God forbid they remake 6, which is probably going to happen at some point, since everyone's going to remake every main title. With the
I think they're going to stop at 6. I think they're going to stop at. That's my personal prediction.
There's always the people that joke we want 7 remade, but that's not going to happen. That is far too big a game to change. I mean, okay, change the last bit, but that's it.
Yeah, I think, in my personal opinion, I think they are going to stop the remake train at some point, and I think they'll stop with more than likely 6. That'll be the end-all, be-all, and then they can be like, we remade every single mainline game, so fans can't point at a specific game and be like, I want a remake of that, basically. That's just my own personal feelings on it, but I don't know, what do you guys think?
LadyAshford, what's your thoughts on the current trend of remakes? Do you reckon it's going to be finish at 5 or 6 and, you know, just continue with the main line permanently from that point?
I think so. I can't see why you would go past 6, to be honest. It's kind of, as you sort of said, a good opportune time to stop. I mean, you would argue, why would you bother with 6? But to be fair, it's actually quite a good co-op game. And it was one of the few, I mean, 5 is as well, but it's one of the few where you have that, and I think that is one of the things I particularly love in there. It's add to that. You can play it on your own if you want, or you can play it as co-op, and you don't always get that, and I think that's a nice little addition. It's worth doing for that.
Do you think?
Much more.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, before we move on to the actual, what the future of the next mainline entry would be, I'm curious if, obviously, with Code Veronica, it's a given what we'd likely want changed. Obviously, the fire extinguisher soft locking issue is the main one, which I know that's the biggest complaint I see with that game, is just basically that sodding fire extinguisher. I'm like, just remember to be organised.
What about the moths, dude? They lay the freaking eggs on your back, and then you don't know when
they're... The blue herbs are right next to you when they do that. It's not that bad. It's a mild inconvenience.
You got to go back into the moth room to get them, and then they lay another egg on you.
Yeah,
just keep doing it over and over until they run out of eggs.
Capcom's like, you know what, we can't take it out of the game, it's already in there, just put blue herbs next to the room or something.
I mean, to be fair, the moths aren't like Pringles. It's not a case they're going to pop until you can't stop. I mean, they're just going to, they are just going to keep going and going and going, but you can just, blue herb, right, I'll just leave the room really quickly.
I just was like, I remember seeing it, I was like, they're so cute, these little moths, and then no, they're not cute. They're a menace.
I mean, to be fair, the one thing, if Code Veronica gets remade, I don't mind if they chop and change various bits. I mean, keep the core of the game, that's fine, but the one thing I don't want them to remove is that torture chamber bit underneath the medical building, because that was one of the most haunting and brilliant areas I ever experienced in that game.
Yeah, yes, that's my favorite part.
I mean, it was, I think that had some of the best document work in there from the psychopathic kind of autopsy surgeon, or kind of anatomist, I think it was, and his kind of thought, and the talking of a demon, encouraging him to torture, and that. I mean, that was something we didn't really kind of get. We didn't get that kind of disassociative kind of side of a character when they're talking. I mean, you got some weird stuff from like Irons, like he just stuffed people or whatever, but you never got that level of kind of, you know, I'm doing this, but I feel something else is influencing me to do it. And I mean, there's obviously going to be some things they're going to have to tweak. I mean, there's the whole kind of, everyone keeps going on about the whole kind of cross-dressing thing with Alfred and Alexia and the possibly awkward relationship between the twins and that, but...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
We've had a lot of uncomfortable moments in Resident Evil. I mean...
True.
I really don't think it's too big a deal. I think, obviously, the way Claire reacts to Alfred, that's going to be an awkward one, but that's just down to how... I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but if I don't know, I feel like some people keep writing off Code Veronica saying it's too problematic to be remade, but then again, you can remake it into the style that works in the current trends.
I think so too.
Yeah, it's an awkward one, because as you already mentioned about Dark Side Chronicles, that's one of the reasons I'm sort of pro and con to them remaking Code Veronica, because I love it so much. I don't want them to mess it up. And when I saw what they did with Dark Side Chronicles, I went from like it being my favourite game and Alexia being my favourite character to me actually hating her. I could not stand Alexia in the remake. You know, you have it was weird to have this whole yeah, they had this whole like incestuous type kind of relationship, and all that was a bit weird. But then they completely shifted the other way when they remade it. So I've no
Yeah.
idea what they're actually going to do. I think you're right in that. The world seems to be very sensitive these days, and I think there's quite a few areas in Code Veronica where that pokes a bit. But I wouldn't want it to change. I think it's got one of the more psychological and emotional depths in the villains. There's so much, as you just sort of mentioned, Retna. There's so much there that hints at the characters behind the villains, and what they're actually like. And Alfred in particular, honestly, he blew me away a bit. I found him so annoying and irritating when it started, and by the time he ended, I felt so sorry for him. I was like, oh, just want to give him a hug. I couldn't bear it. I was just doing all this for his sister. So sad, got everything wrong, but it's also just such a and all of that from Files, really. It was brilliant, and it's hauntingly scary when you go down there, especially in the torture room where there's a little chair and his glass of wine sat there, and just bloodstained walls everywhere. You're like, what is happening down here?
That's like some great attention to
honestly,
detail.
considering all the different torture chambers we've seen over the series, obviously the ones in the training facility in Zero, or the underneath Castle Dimitrescu in Village, and that, out of the lot of them, all the torture chambers and places I've seen, the one underneath that anatomist's building in that in Code Veronica is the most haunting of the lot of them. It's just, it was done so well, and the atmosphere of it still holds up well. And obviously, we mentioned the psychology of it in the documents, and the fact that they've got a bottle of wine next to a table. I mean, that sense of like someone's enjoying this while it's happening. You don't see that in the other ones. You don't see a place where they can relax and say, "Oh, right, that guy's in an Iron Maiden, but I'm going to have a bit of a Shiraz or something." I mean, it might be, I don't know. It might be a Merlot.
A white wine kind of guy.
I don't know what psychopaths like to drink. Anyway,
I like rosé.
I mean, Jack Daniels and a glass of Coke. I'd be the cheapest kind of torture drink ever.
You'd be like pouring the Coke in as they're being tortured. Like,
I'm giving away too much now. That's worrying.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, Will, I was going to ask you, so if, obviously, I mean, me and Lady Ashford, we've obviously been ardent Code Veronica fans, but if Code Veronica was to be remade, what would make you play it?
I mean, the only thing that would stop me from playing it is if it didn't have the words Resident or Evil in it, so I'd play it no matter what. I mean, I feel like Capcom's in such a good place right now that like they're just putting out high quality stuff, and I know a lot of people, I mean, they don't like Resident Evil 3 remake, we all know that, but I personally thought it was a good game. I thought it was a good game. Just maybe not the best remake, but in my opinion, it's not like they're putting out terrible games that we're not gonna play. So they have people dedicated that love the stories, clearly. Like Resident Evil 4 was handled with a lot of love. You can just tell from like that perspective. Because they didn't have Shinji Mikami in it, they're like, well, we're just gonna have to work within our means, and they just went for it. So I feel like if they still have that passion going into it, that they'll knock it out of the park. I think the one thing I want to see though is that castle part, like when you're about to go to the castle section of Code Veronica, like that's like the most atmospheric to me. Mm-hmm. So I hope that they maybe have a little bit more presentation with that. Like they could really take some liberties with it and have some fun.
Yeah. The bridge leading out to the hidden manor was always a good spot, and obviously the hanging doll music inside the building itself was incredible. I mean,
the atmosphere in that whole castle.
The atmosphere is insane, yeah.
I'll be honest, the only thing I'd worry about mainly with the remake, besides the whole issues of how they'd handle Alfred and the cross-dressing stuff, is actually how much would they ruin the music? Because let's be fair, the 2 remake, I don't remember a soundtrack at all. It was way too subtle. 3 had a bit of a soundtrack, but again, not very memorable. And 4, there were some bits in there that were alright, but again, I feel like music's kind of dropped off unless you count. Well, actually, I can't think of a single recent Resident Evil that hasn't really had a decent song. I mean, unless you have to go out and look for them. I mean, obviously, Ant Roadie was a great theme tune for 7, but really, there hasn't really been much in the way of kind of attention-grabbing music in Resident Evil for a while, except for the main themes they use, except for the 2, 3, and 4 remakes. And I don't want to lose. Yeah, I just don't want to lose like Picuse or Hanging Doll or any of the other iconic tunes from Code Veronica. But I'd be wary of them kind of messing
They
around with that
probably
too
will.
much.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, you only hear. I feel like in Resident Evil 2 remake, you only hear the save room theme in that once, and that's when you turn on the light when you first enter it. I never like unless maybe I'm just too focused because Mr. X is chasing me around. Like, you never really hear the save room like again after that point. You know, like. Village did it really well. Village actually did that part of it pretty good, because when you enter the save room with the Duke and everything, like, the music does kick in and you do hear it. 7 does it too, actually. So I don't know. Like, they need to like take a note from Christopher Nolan. I don't know if you guys watch his movies, but like, dude, like his audio, like his soundtracks are in front of the dialogue a lot of times, and maybe Capcom just needs to take a note out of that and say, like, hey, maybe we should put some audio first and then put in the sound effects. That's just what makes Resident Evil 2 out of those classic games.
Yeah, I'd say though with the 2 remake, they did give us the option of the classic audio music, which did help somewhat, but then because of it being a mixture of the old and the new, it was a little bit jarring, but then it's their own. With the current setup, it was great. With the old music, it was some bits worked, some bits didn't. It was, I think, if you could get the right balance between the two, so like the kind of creepy moments where you're walking through the hallways, you could use the original RPD music for the ground floor, the second floor, and so on. But when it gets to being attacked, you could change it to something like the more modern kind of music they were doing. But it's one of my biggest concerns with Code Veronica is how they'd handle it. But I just have to see what happens when it happens.
I think so too. And I'd be a little sad if we didn't hear anything about 1 next year, or I'm not looking for much in the way of Resident Evil this year. I mean, those guys need a break, to be honest. I mean, like, they've just been giving us so many games back to back. Like, the dude that did Resident Evil 2 remake, 3 and now 4 was the same director on all those, plus he also co-directed Resi 5. So it's like that dude just needs a break. Like, just give him a year off to like chill, and then maybe get back into it.
Yeah, there's yeah. So probably just the last thing on kind of the future of it that I can think of is really that we've obviously talked about the future of like what remake could pop up and how story could be affected, what characters we can expect, what things we can expect in general, but we haven't really talked much about the next main entry like Resident Evil 9, because Village has set up some big story beats in a way, but then it's also just got rid of one of their newest characters in basically just 2 games, and then they've also used the Shadows of Rose DLC to kind of write off the rest of that family, but obviously with a bit of a time skip, so there is that gap between Resident Evil 9, which surely is going to take place just months or weeks after the Village, and then you've got that 16-year bit of span until Rose's story. So the question is, what's going to be the main focus of 9 at this point? Ruletime, I'll pull that to you.
Oh, sorry, I'm bad. I speak ahead of my brain sometimes. I apologize.
Right.
I think Resident Evil 9, more than likely, like you said, it'll probably take a couple weeks or months after Village does. We know Chris is alive because, Rose is still alive. Like, she mentions him at the end of Village and her own DLC. So I kind of feel like with Resident Evil 9, in my opinion, I don't know how they're going to set it up, but I know Chris is on his way back to the BSAA. I kind of would like to kind of pick it up there. They didn't close the door on the Winters family completely either. Like, that door is still kind of slightly cracked for Rose to potentially make a cameo or something. But as far as the main story goes with Rose and Ethan and everything, like, I do feel like they shut the door on them being playable characters again. I think we're going to see Chris, maybe Jill. And I have a question for you guys too, actually. Do you think that Resident Evil will end at some point? Like, the main story?
I think as long as they're making money, then people enjoy it. They'll keep going. I think, won't it?
Yeah, you're right.
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think so.
I'd like to think so too.
There's so much. There's just so much you could use with it. Sorry.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's so many franchises that have been going on for years, but the difference between, say, a Zelda, a Metal Gear Solid, or a Mario, or God of War is that Resident Evil has been a near constant presence since 1996. I mean, if it's not been games, it's been like films. I mean, or it's been recently the board games have even tided us over a little bit, or even just the CGI films, the TV series, and even Netflix. They've always had a presence of sort in some way, whatever time period we can think of for the last over quarter of a decade, century now.
Actually, well, let me rephrase it a little bit. Do you think that the mainline characters will end at some point, like Jill, Chris?
Got to.
See, I don't. I think they'll just introduce like they did on 6. They introduced Sherry, and it's sort of now you've got a young Natalia villain that could pop up. So I think that they're always just gonna find new ways to introduce new characters, or who knows? And we could be running around with Jill's child. Some nemesis. I don't know. Who knows?
She also won't age.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, like, not so much like killing them off or anything like that, but if they retired or what have you, like, do you guys feel like that has to happen maybe at some point in like Resident Evil 9 or 10?
I think I'd kind of like love it story-wise, if they did kill a protagonist off, it just gives you that sort of emotion, and you feel more with the characters when if something happens, like if God forbid Barry gets killed off, he's a hardcore Stars member, it'll rile up all the characters and you as a player, he's a key person that we love. So it would mean a lot, and I think it would be more I certainly would be more invested in the games and more emotionally invested in the games and wanting to actually.
You'd feel more impact.
Yeah.
It's a bit. Oh, we're all just retired now. See ya.
Yeah, bye. You
golf.
kind of feel like they need to be killed off in a way.
You'll have you'll have these like side games. Chris at the golf course.
Yeah, I feel like Chris in the next game. I feel like they're gonna have some kind of finality to his story if they bring him back. Either 9 or 10.
Yeah, I'd reckon that. I mean, obviously Chris isn't my top favorite character, but I don't want to see him killed off because you'd want to. I mean, the fact is the Shadows of Rose thing kind of rules that out anyway. They're not going to kill him off unless they do something weird with him, which isn't likely to happen. But
no, like Chris is like the poster child of Resident Evil. Same with Jill.
I mean, you got the poster child of the games, which is Chris, and you got the poster child of the CGI films, which is Leon. So
I was about to say Leon is definitely a poster child.
And then you've got the poster child of Not to Drive a Car Properly by Leon as well. It's just a question of how they do it, because many franchises over the years that have had long-running characters have written them off or changed them in some ways. Like God of War with Kratos, there was.
I wouldn't want him to be like The Last of Us Part 2. Like I wouldn't want him to go that way. That'd be too much.
No, that was
like. But if he died heroically, though, in like a way that fits maybe his character, would you be upset by that? I don't think I would.
Not particularly. I guess it depends how it's handled, and if it's done in a very poor way, it's going to rile up the fans. If it's done in a very good way, like for example how Logan was handled in the X-Men film series, and his finality of his death. I mean, obviously Deadpool 3 is going to spoil that now. They're going to bring him back and do whatever. But
besides that,
I mean, besides that moment, which we know is probably going to be really funny and bring him in a different way, his story over basically 6 X-Men films, basically, that was done well. You had a long stretch of him playing that Hugh Jackman playing that character for over 20 years now, and
if they did something like that, you wouldn't be disappointed.
If it was just a quick kind of he's dead, like they did with
dude, they would not do that. They better anyway. That's all I'm saying. Like I'll be upset for you guys.
Yeah, it's I just don't think Resident Evil in general is going to end. I mean, there's too many characters to play with, but the core characters, I think there's got to be some that either retire. Maybe one of them could be killed as a way of emotionally investing one of the other remaining characters to keep fighting or whatever. I mean, There is the awkwardness, and I've seen quite a bit of pushback on this, of the fact that because of Jill's previous infections from Resident Evil 5 and that, and her treatment and that, and with what we saw in Death Island, that her aging has changed, and this seems to be a recurring factor, especially with the female characters. They don't seem to be aging, and I've seen this cause a lot of friction.
The young forever virus, as people call it. The young forever virus.
Yeah. I just find it more weird that it's happened
on
to Claire.
Twitter came up with that one, I think.
It's kind of good Capcom a way of just keeping Jill in the series forever, really, without having to explain it and keep her looking the same way that she does.
I don't mind the whole kind of keeping her forever. Yeah, it's the keeping forever I don't mind, but the whole keeping her forever young, that's a bit of a weird one. It's
I think so too.
It's just a strange choice to make. I mean,
like,
we've had other characters that have been fine.
When you see Chris in Village, and there's that moment where him and Ethan have a heart-to-heart when he's about to get into that crazy-ass machine to go take Heisenberg on. It's like you can see the aging in his face at that point. It's like, yeah, this dude's like, he's old, man. Like, he's seen a lot. Not like old, but like, you can tell he's seen some shit. And like, obviously there's that. Yeah, a lot of volcano. And like, you also see that one shot where he's like smoking the cigarette and everything else. So I feel like Chris is going to be in Resident Evil 9, just to bring that back around. I do honestly feel that way. I think they're going to make him the protagonist of the next game.
Yeah.
Maybe have him co-star with Jill. And then, you get like the team that started the game, maybe they have some kind of crazy-ass adventure or something. I can't see them bringing Leon back because he just was in 4 Remake, so people might be tired of seeing him. I'm not. I love Leon, but
I've just always thought there's never really much of a connection for Leon to Chris, except for obviously in 6. But then that's only because world events kind of brought them together. There's no real kind of partnership like there was with Jill, or the sibling thing with Claire. Leon doesn't really have that much of a connection to Chris as such. But if he did team up with him in a game, that would be interesting. But whether it'd work, I don't know. But then, obviously, we've seen how everyone teaming up worked with Death Island, which was, to me, that CGI film did feel like a swan song for the CGI films overall, unless they're going to make some, like, in-between ones, in the past or whatever.
There. Yeah, I
don't see anything new.
I'm curious, what do you think about Resident Evil 9? Like, what do you think is going to happen from here?
I honestly don't know. I have so many theories. I think you probably. I like your idea of bringing it back as a, because it sounds like it's the BSAA that's gone bad, and it'd be good to bring, Chris and Jill, the founders of that. It'd be good to bring them in their sort of element to take down the BSAA or find out what's going on there. Potentially bring Barry back, because then you do have like the OG crew, and Rebecca. Rebecca can be there, and then it's literally like Resi 1 cast, isn't it? That would be awesome.
I think so. I think that's like, if I was going to do it that way, I think that's how I'd do it. I would want the OG group back together, and then you could really make it hype up, people like, oh, the OG crew is getting back together for one crazy ass adventure. And I don't know if they'll put co-op into it. That would be interesting, but I guess we'd have to see.
If 9 comes before a potential 5 remake or whatever remake they're doing next, it could be their way of testing the waters, because they kind of did that with Village, with the whole introduction of the Duke and the currency and buying weapons, upgrading and increasing your health that way. Yeah,
dude, Village, like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but Village felt to me like a testing ground for Resident Evil 4 remake.
I don't like to admit that, because I like Village a lot, as you can tell from all the pickled babies on my walls, the jars everywhere. But it's one of my top 4, definitely. It's just I just don't like the way people kind of discredit it by saying it was just a test bed for 4. It's not a real Resident Evil. It's just got werewolves. I mean, you've got a guy punching a boulder in 5. Don't give me that whole it's not Resident Evil. You've got a guy punching a rock. I mean, what did it do? It just sat there.
Well, no, you're right. I don't mean to discredit it by saying that, but they tested a lot of things, I feel like, in Village to bring to 4 remake, and no, Resident Evil Village, like I just played it in VR recently. Like that game is to me a Resident Evil game, like from beginning to end. It's got crazy ass shit in it. That whole Heisenberg fight is nothing but Resident Evil, in my opinion. Like you drive this crazy ass machine, and like I mean, it's just, but I feel like you're right though. Like if they do Resident Evil 9 and do co-op in it, it'll be a good testing ground to bring that into a 5 remake or something.
Yeah, there's obviously elements of Village that were used for 4, and potentially if 9 does that same thing with the co-op, it could lead into a 5 remake. For me though, with 9 especially, I mean, the obvious choice is to get Chris involved because of his involvement with Village and the whole BSAA plot. I mean, if it gets to 9 and they don't continue the BSAA plot, and if they just drop it again like they've done with previous plot points, I think that's going to rile up the fan base somewhat. There is an element of something that I think many kind of overlook though, and I feel like it's just maybe it's a bit of a apathy towards the character, but I feel like maybe Mia deserves a bit of a chance. I mean, she has got.
Mia. She just disappeared.
Yeah, she just f***ed off into the sunset, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's the thing that I did. That's the one thing I really didn't like about Village, besides Chris just being a dick for not talking properly. It's the whole way that Mia's kind of a capable person that can hold her own. She can wield a gun. She tried to take on Evelyn in 7 and that.
Yeah.
But then suddenly she's reduced to someone who's just stuck in a cell for a whole game and just has no real bearing on the plot.
Yeah.
We never found out her backstory in 7.
Exactly. No, I was gonna say, and then with the Rose DLC, it was all about her and Ethan, and then now she's with Chris, and I'm like, hello, what happened to Mia?
Yeah, like what happened
and end up locked up.
The person that gave you birth, like
I know.
Come on, like.
I mean, she was a baby when Ethan went. She wouldn't even remember Ethan. Yeah, like Mia, who was clearly around, nothing.
No, there is an element of that she's just been pushed to the side, as it were, and I am hoping that there is maybe one more use for her at least. I mean, she was a member of a group that developed Evelyn. She has I mean, the way I see it, she just babysat a BOW, but then obviously people are saying no, she's a terrorist. She shouldn't be involved. She should be locked up and all this. But I mean,
dude, she kicked ass though.
She kicked ass, and there's other characters that have been morally grey in the series, and they don't quite get the same level of flack. I just think it may be a recency thing, and I'm just
not
worried.
Gonna lie, but I chose Zoe.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
Yeah. The first time I played, I almost thought about it, but I was like, I'll save my wife. I'll save Mia.
I was like, Mia's been nothing but a pain. I need to save Zoe, who's done nothing but help me. And I was like, what is this?
Then I found out that Zoe dies, and I'm like, alright, I'm glad I chose Mia.
I mean, to be fair, I just thought, I know she chopped my hand off, but I did get a free iWatch for having my hand chopped off, so I thought that's great. So I got a free Apple product just for having my arm chopped off with an axe. Sorry, chainsaw.
Do you think that they'll bring in Resident Evil 9? I know it's kind of silly, but like, do you think they'll bring back the
window cleaners?
I hope not.
It's not the goop that you pour on your arm.
Oh, the healing.
Yeah,
the healing.
I think it'll be the like they did with Chris's brief playthrough on Village on his bit. I think it's going to be like the steroid syringes or whatever it was he was using to heal instead.
That's how he got those arms.
That's how he was healing himself in the game on that section. It wasn't the pouring liquid on himself. It was the injections onto him. But
in VR, clearly just do it.
Yeah, I guess the biggest question I've got with 9 is obviously with Ethan and that story for 7 and Village, we had that first-person perspective gameplay style. I'd argue for the sake of a consistent trilogy of games, which is continue the story, it should stay the same. But do you reckon that'll happen?
I think so. Yeah.
My gut feeling's telling me because of the remakes being in the third-person style and the kind of the way they did it with the Shadows of Rose thing and then put it as an option for Village, it feels like they're going to try and veer away from first person, but first person.
Maybe they give us the option for both, and I've said that.
I've got to say the same.
Give us third
do the options
and first.
Yeah, I'd say the options.
Yeah.
They should have 3 options: one for first person, one for third person, and then one for camera point, like like on the OG games, static camera.
Oh my god, I would die if they put that in the game. 100%.
I'd like it, but I don't see the fixed camera one happening. As much as I'd love it, it would be great. But
I don't
Maybe
see
in
it
certain
either.
parts. Maybe in certain parts you could do it. Like if
It
they
could-
have like a section where it would work.
it could work
is
like
one of
the
those-
Yeah.
was it Lost in Nightmares DLC for 5 did that briefly. If you did a certain
Yeah.
action, it changed to fixed camera angles for one
You
of the
could
rooms.
change
Yeah.
it, fixed camera.
I think it was
yeah.
when you went out in and out of the door, like the entrance door 5 times, it would
Yeah.
change the perspective.
Mm.
So there is that possibility. It's just I do think if they start basically changing it to the over the shoulder thing again, just because Ethan's not there, it just feels like a bit of a spit in the face in the previous 2 games. Why are you changing up your whole gameplay on basically a trilogy of story here? Because you've got the whole kind of BSAA thing. There's still no kind of clue what's happened to the connections at this point. They're kind of an organisation that's still out there. So you have got a recurring corporation, as it were, like Umbrella was, but at this point, what are they doing? I mean, there is a lot to play with out there. It's just, I think, something that Resident Evil kind of struggles with, and I think you both might agree with me, so I don't know, but it's since the beginning, Resident Evil has had this problem of different directors and different story writers all throughout. It's not been like, say, a good example would be George Lucas with the initial 6 Star Wars films. His vision was in all 6 of those, and he made sure it stayed on track. I mean, there's going to be differences and like visuals or fighting styles or whatever, but with Resident Evil, there has been a little bit of inconsistency as such, but it still worked. It's still a fantastic series, as we both know and love. We all know and love, but I just feel like there's that struggle of, is it going to stay consistent between Village and this 9th entry, whatever it's called, whether it's Resident Evil Phoenix or something, whatever they're going to fix that 9 into.
Phoenix.
It's going to be something with a 1 or an X or an A or something. It's got to be something with an X.
If they go with that name, I'm sorry. I can't.
Operation Phoenix.
I've seen
it could be
Phoenix.
Resurrecting Wesker.
Yeah.
There we go. What were you saying?
So it would be so interesting, isn't it, if the trailer was just like a pair of sunglasses?
That would be kind of cool. Or a teaser image with that. That's how you know.
Oh, Wesker says
That'd
he's
be
going to give you 9 minutes to 7.
Oh, yeah.
He has 9 minutes to
shit.
spend to play with us.
He'll be
Yeah,
like,
got
no,
9
I'll
minutes to
change it
complete
to
the
8.
game.
I'll change it to 8. Actually, no. Oh, you had 9. Yeah, because of Resident Evil 9. I see. I gotcha.
Yep.
I think in my opinion, like, I would like to see some unique locations for the next game. You know, I know that they've probably given us a lot of locations creatively, but I also feel like there's some maybe we haven't explored at the moment too. You know,
There is that whole
Yeah.
point of the BSAA headquarters apparently being in London. I'm hoping that this does mean that we get our first Resident Evil game set in the UK, because I mean, we've explored sections of Europe, like the remote part of Spain, the unnamed regions of Romania, we've had China, we've had South America, obviously most of the Americas, the Midwest, San Francisco, New York, we've had various places across the world. But to see some more unique locations, and I mean to be fair, it's because there was I can't remember the name of the game, but there was one, it might have been, I don't know, it's not The Getaway or something, but there was one set in London. It was the only game I've played where I saw W.H. Smiths on a street, and I want to see like a zombie apocalypse with a Greggs. I mean, just a pile of them just running through the London streets. You see London Underground signs. You see, like, a copy of the Metro laid on the floor. Anything, just that madness of it and that kind of real-world reference of it, which we've seen in various games. But I just, for the humour of it, I'd love to see a Greggs in the street as there's a zombie outbreak.
You know, I really like that idea of Resident Evil 9 being next too, because then it's like it's unknown on what's gonna happen next. You know, like with the remakes, you get so many people that are like, well, it's just the same game, the same story, and everything, and it's like that. And that's true to a degree, and but there's also things that do change in those two. But with Resident Evil 9, it's like all bets are off. It's like, you know, you could speculate, and it could be, it's a brand new story. So that's the beauty of it, I kind of feel like. Oh, question. Do you guys think that it should stay? Oh, what were you saying? Go ahead.
No, go on, ask your question first.
My brain was getting ahead of me. The inventory system, do we want that to stay the same from 4 Remake? And have a trilogy of those?
We
Like
kind of,
Village 4.
well, we kind of had a thing where 7 had the 7's inventory system was used for 2 and 3, and then Village's inventory system was remapped slightly, somewhat, to work with 4's classic kind of attaché case one. So whether 9's kind of inventory system is going to change again to reflect more like, say, 5 was, with the just 9 items and 4 of them on a quick swap. Maybe we could be viewing it that.
I would like to see a merchant actually in Resident Evil 5. By the way, and if they do a remake, like just legit, I just want, because they had plans to bring a merchant in the concept art for it, and just didn't happen. That dude you meet at the beginning of Resident Evil 5, he was actually going to be, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the merchant for the game throughout the whole time you were going through it.
Oh yeah. I'd be curious about it. I mean, I'll be honest, I think the Duke was probably the better of the merchants that we've had, because he felt like someone that he felt like he had an influence on the story more. I mean, the guy was much more present and was actually involved in actually getting you to where you need to be, and not just being someone that would be popped up ready to give you weapons like the original merchant was, which was still a great character. He was still an excellent character, but he just didn't have that much bearing on the plot. But then the Duke was someone who basically just, rescued you after you'd been attacked, and then just got you to your final position where you needed to be for the last boss fight. And a merchant that's got more of a role in the plot would be a good, interesting point to put into 9, or if, God forbid, a remake of 5. But how did they explain that one? I don't know, because that one takes place across such a huge area with the swamps, Kijuju and the boat and that. I mean, how are you going to explain him jumping from there to there and then suddenly being on that plane near the end, just before you go into your final battle? That's going to be a difficult one to explain.
That'll be really hard, I think.
Yeah. It's, go
on. I do love the merchant and the Duke. I think they're funny and great that they're in there, but I always thought they just have no place there. I mean, just like the whole place has gone to pot and they're just sort of sat there. Want to buy something? I'm just sitting here, moving around with you to all these various places. Just happen to have loads of guns on me, not helping you fight. I thought, I'm just like, what? It ruined a bit of their like a lot of the games you feel kind of alone, and that's one of the things about horror. And you're like, well,
I never thought that way ever, and now you got me like, why are you here, Mr. Merchant? Like, the whole place this island is gonna blow up. You understand that?
Leon ain't coming back for you. He's long gone. Just like, I don't know, is this the next place I stand? What?
But like, isn't there like, am I wrong in saying that, like, isn't there like a merchant like organization in Resident Evil? I swear I heard that somewhere. There's a theory out there that there's like an entire organization of merchants in Resident Evil that all their goal is to sell you shit.
I just remember him. I just remember being able to shoot him in the original, and I got annoyed I couldn't kill him in the remake.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
I tried over and over, and I just thought it was because in the original, at least, it made it funny because you had the theory of, does that mean he's infected with a plague because of his eyes going weird when it was nighttime as well?
Yeah, what? Yeah.
Because that was an extra little bit. You lost that in the remake as such. I mean, it wasn't exactly a major thing. It wasn't necessary to the plot and that, but it was an interesting little thing to throw in the original. And I mean, I kind of got. I missed kind of shooting him as well, to be honest, because he'd suddenly inexplicably come back again as soon as you left the room.
I teabagged him in VR. I just went.
Oh dear.
I don't think that's something you want to admit on this, really.
I don't mind. I did it. I kissed him too in VR as well. I remember doing that.
I'd love that. I would love that. I can't handle VR for too long. It makes me dizzy.
No,
but I love it.
I got my ceiling.
It was going to lead into I was going to ask another question on what do you think about the way that Resident Evil in particular has been going forward with sort of how easier it's become. If you look back at like Code Veronica, that's been known as like one of the hardest Resident Evils. And then I think, in my personal opinion, as the games have progressed, the games have become slightly easier with, the fact that it auto saves. You don't always have to save at the typewriter. And I think the key one, when it got to, I can't remember exactly which one it was where I first saw it, but now it's got to the point where there's like yellow paint on the floor. What are your thoughts on that?
I remember that, by the way, and I just remember thinking like, I didn't even think about the yellow stuff. Like when you're playing it, you don't really even think
Yeah.
about that, you
Do
know.
I
But
was playing Village, and I remember, so I think I was being chased by something and running, and all I could see, because it was in such a dark room and it was all dark and cryptic, and then there was this yellow slathering of paint on one of the walls. And I'm like, oh, I wonder where I'm supposed to go. And it really took that horror away from me, because I was just like, I want to be scared. I want to, like, where am I going, and not have a clue, and like be
yeah,
chased and have that. And I honestly, I lost a lot of it in those games because of I didn't mind it so much on boxes. It just made it, more helpful to see what you were doing. But in those sorts of situations where the yellow paint was basically just an arrow going this way, please.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
a bit much
And
for
that,
me. I didn't know what you guys thought, and if it was going to become even easier as we progress.
that falls more to the to the designers. I kind of feel like, because if you think about it, it's their job to kind of make things stand out more, to make you have, like, when you're playing Resident Evil 4, like the original, for instance, like, it obviously doesn't have that. But I feel like the way that the boxes and crates are designed, they kind of stand out more than the rest of the stuff out there. So I'll be honest, I never noticed it. It doesn't bother me too much. In fact, I think they could play with that a little bit, to be honest. And maybe, like, in the game, they could have, like, an in-universe reason why everything's painted, yellow. Maybe create, like, a character or, like, an enemy or something that you discover his, like, yellow paint room, where all he's like, he's obsessed with, like,
Pink, isn't
painting
it?
things yellow.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
like in
the
the Duke's wagon,
actually,
he's like paint cans.
yeah, that'd
Letters.
actually be perfect. Put it on the
Yeah.
merchant, or like someone in the game. Like, how fun! I think that'd be fun. Like, to just kind of like people.
I've just
Play
got this
with it.
vision of the Ganados in Resident Evil 4, planning an ambush, getting ready with their crossbows, rocket launchers, whatever, hiding behind sandbags. And all you can see is this one Ganado with a paint pot and a brush just going up to everything like that. And all you can see is one of them just going, "Save Eduardo, stop taking that pot."
I'm gonna animate something with this now. You inspired me so much. I'm gonna animate.
Yeah, like, just fun would that be?
Paint.
Just like maybe someone's just so obsessed with painting the doors and like putting yellow tape on windows and freaking places that he may have been that helped him out throughout the game. Like, like in Portal, there, if you guys have played Portal, that there's Ratman, right? Like, and you can like go in and like discover like this room where like this crazy madman has done stuff. Like, I kind of feel like they could do that with Resident Evil. Like,
Yeah,
how fun
yeah.
would that be to just have a character kind of like that? But to go back to your question on how easy the games are, I do feel that way too. But I also feel like they did a really good job with like giving you different difficulty levels that you want to go to, like madness or
Yeah.
professional. And,
I agree.
yeah, because then you can kind of choose how you want to go about it and play it your way. I do miss, like, because newer Resident Evil fans, they don't know what it's like back in the day where we had to get ink ribbons and save, and then it's like you're like at the final boss and maybe you haven't saved in like an hour or something, and then you die and go all the way back. It's like defeating.
Yep.
But yeah, I feel like maybe in that aspect they should maybe make the hard modes more hard, but they also are pretty hard as is.
I was about to say, yeah, I agree. I think like the different difficulties, they don't feel imbalanced. They feel like you can have the challenges that you want, and it's not too bad. It's just back even like on some games Code Veronica, it didn't have a difficulty. You play it exactly as it is, and that was it. So this is it gives you more flexibility as a player to play how you want, which I think is good. And also, I did wonder as well, with the graphics. Back then, graphics were so bad, like you could tell exactly where you needed to go just by this, like the one shiny thing that was there, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the thing I'm going. Whereas now the graphics are so good that actually things blend in more, so maybe that's one of the reasons why the yellow paint came out.
100%. Yeah, that's why. Because you're exactly right. Like back then, if you go play Resident Evil Remake right now, it's like what objects you can get, because it's just the pre-rendered like as
Shiny.
beautiful as that game is in my like you can see the objects shine in that game, and like it's like I feel like Resident Evil has always kind of had it. They just made it more prominent with the yellow paint and shit. But sorry, Retina wants to talk. He's been wanting to talk forever now, I feel.
There is it's alright, I'm just more worried I'm getting called Retina again, but besides that,
oh god, did I do that?
It's alright. It's alright, Andy from Biohazard Declassified's much worse for it. He does it on purpose. He knows to wind me up just because he's from the south and I'm from the north. But anyway, just to cover your mentioning, Lady Ashford, about the state of difficulties within Resident Evil, and yeah, I can agree that Code Veronica was definitely one of the more difficult ones, and there wasn't a way to adjust it, and there was no kind of adaptive difficulty as some games have now, where it'd get easier if you were struggling or harder if you're doing too well. There was never that feature. But I would say that, yeah, the yellow paint thing, I've seen some people complain about that, saying it makes it too easy, and obviously one of the things that was suggested is like having a toggle option to switch it off. So, okay, if you really want to make it harder for yourself, go ahead and do that, but obviously it's down to what exactly the devs have time to develop and all that. So it's down to, again, do they have the time, and they have to work during the crunch to get it done and that. But in general, Resident Evil games have gotten easier since Code Veronica. I mean, part of it is because of the way 4 was made. The ink ribbons were no longer a thing. The action was more of a focus rather than the survival in general, right up to 6, and probably aspects of that were involved in the Revelations games, but then they did bring back some horror, especially in Revelations 2. But in general, we haven't seen ink ribbons especially used. I mean, they haven't been around since Code Veronica. The only other time they have definitely been used was in the 2 remake when you used hardcore difficulty. That's the only time, but that gave me some hope, because I thought, oh, hang on, they're bringing these back. This is going to make it even more tense. I mean, it's tense enough with, the fact that zombies are bullet sponges now, and they can take a significant amount of damage before going down and stuff, which was great. But then when 3 came out, they still had the typewriters, but then the ink ribbons were gone again, which was worrying. Even on Inferno difficulty, you still didn't have ink ribbons, which was kind of a worrying prospect. And then, obviously the paint issue was still an ongoing thing, and to be honest, obviously 7 introduced that especially, and that was quite a good one. It fitted with the dilapidated kind of environments and the characters as such. Village, you could argue it sort of works there as well. I mean, maybe not as much in certain locations, say like Castle Dimitrescu. I mean, why would they have yellow paint all over the place, considering how refined and lovely they are and how very high-end the place is? You'd expect them to try
And then they're just great with yellow.
I just get the feeling that the 3 sisters are doing that just to piss off Lady D. Just like, Cassandra, put that paint down!
See, I'm telling you, they could find a creative way, like, because people have called it out now. It's like they could find a creative way to put it into the game, like, because Resident Evil's can be wacky. We all know that. Why not make it more wacky?
I've now got this vision of Daniela just distracting Lady D in the corner, and then Cassandra's behind her just giggling to herself, just painting on a wall. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do this.
Maybe have Alfred Ashford, like, he'll be like, I painted the entire place yellow for you or something. I don't know.
That would actually that would fit more with him, really. The fact he's just gone mad, decided, this place could do with a splash of colour, because I'm lonely,
Yeah.
I'm pretending to be my own sister, I'm going to paint stuff.
Yeah, I painted all the crates yellow.
Yeah. There's still hidden bombs in some of them, so you don't know which crate's safe. There's always that manipulative, psychotic side that could twist the whole yellow safety feature with him, especially.
They should do that.
There's ways they could subvert it and use it, and obviously switch it off or change things up, put new difficulties in. I mean, honestly, Inferno. I mean, as much flack as the Resident Evil 3 remake gets, I loved Inferno mode, because that really changed things up even more. I mean, not just making things more difficult, but even threw in new enemy placements. I mean, it gave us lickers in places we didn't expect. It gave us, I think it was probably the better of the higher difficulties I've played recently, and I mean, obviously, I tried 4 on professional mode. I didn't notice too much of a difference apart from just how hard things got. I felt like, I mean, to be fair, that game's enormous, so it's good in its own right, but I'll be honest, I'll only play that for separate ways now, that's it.
I think so too.
Yeah,
well, no, I mean, I'll go back and replay it through someday, but yeah. I've just played so much of it, It's like...
To be fair, I only platinumed it so I don't have to play the main game again, that's it. That's the only reason I platinumed it, so I wouldn't have to touch it, so I will happily play the separate ways one over and over, because I just enjoy it, because it's just the right pace and length to give me the gist of the story of the main bit, but then also have some great moments in there. It's just much more appealing, but then that's just me.
But yeah, I do feel that. You know what I feel like they could do? Maybe they could bring ink ribbons back somehow, and then depending on what difficulty you do, you get less of them. But I mean, that's just kind of how I feel like they could go about it.
It does feel like
Because you just save unlimited.
Yeah. The way 2 did it with having it on the highest difficulty and having a limited amount was great. I mean, you could have a mid-level difficulty with some ink ribbons and then, still be not too hard as hardcore, for example, and then just not have a system mode with no ink ribbons or whatever. So there's the place for him. It's just that I think because we've now ventured into 4 and God knows whatever comes after that, I feel like we are veering away from that saving system again. So I feel like ink ribbons are going to become a redundant thing again.
I think so too. It's too late. You're right.
The storage boxes as well, and it was all right me giving that speech about the merchants noticing, but I didn't really mention about the magical storage boxes that teleport your items all over the place.
They're like Hermione's purse in Harry Potter.
I imagine underneath each storage box there's like these pipes that connect the other storage box or something.
So like a vacuum tube going to each one.
Yeah. Exactly. You just push a button and all your items just pop up.
Well,
I thought it was more sinister. I thought it would be a little mini BOWs just grabbing your stuff and running off to each box. The only help.
Yeah, they'll just carry it there for. How nice of them. Yeah. Those crimson heads that you forgot about.
Yeah, I was going to say as much flack as it gets, I reckon the inventory system that worked in Resident Evil 0 was good. I mean, it was the most realistic take we got on it. Just leave your item there and come back for it.
I mean, I love the concept of it, but in practice, oh my god.
Yeah, it did have an element of tension. It did do something else for us. It did show us where we left the items, unlike the other maps. They never showed you where you left your stuff.
Yeah,
it's so funny getting to that management section.
And I had all my stuff in one room, and it was just this floor of shiny things. And I couldn't find which one was the one I wanted.
You had to pick up each one just to see what.
Couldn't be bothered to look on the map, so I'm just picking up everyone. No, not you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we've pretty much.
Lady Miranda help you if you can forget the hook shot.
Oh yeah. We've pretty much covered the main entries, the remakes, and that. And I mean, obviously, there's been various stuff going on. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one more. With the remake side of things. Do we think Resident Evil 0 and 1 should get a remake? Mm-hmm. That's been going around a lot lately, and I don't know how to feel about it. But the 30th anniversary is a couple years.
Yeah, I get the reasoning behind it. I mean, we still love this remake that's been out since 2002, and then remastered in 2014 just to give it a bit of polish and an alternate control system, which made it more accessible for those who just don't like the tank controls mixed with fixed cameras. It's not usually one or the other they don't like. It's usually the combination of both that seems to be the problem for some players. And some can play with fixed cameras with this alternate control system perfectly fine, or can play with tank controls but without the camera being fixed to a certain point. I can get why it want it remaking to the current standard of the current range of remakes. I just if it's anything like what happened to certain elements of 2 and 4, and obviously the flack that 3 got with its significant changes, I worry that maybe some are going to get really annoyed with one remake being so much of a shell of its former self to remind ourselves of what happened to Kenneth. It's going to just, I think it might put some people off, but then Capcom seems to have a good track record of treating their most beloved games pretty well. I mean, they did it very well with 4, and they did it pretty well with 2, minus the lack of time to get the B scenarios sorted, but they did put some very good stuff together.
Yeah, you're right.
I can see 0 possibly getting the treatment, but if you do one, you've got to do the other, because you can't just say do the first game and then not touch 0, because then where's the explanation of Rebecca? Unless they're going to completely negate that whole game and try to forget about it, which I doubt they're going to do, because that gave us some very good moments.
Make Billy be able to make herbs, because he can't in that goddamn game, dude.
I mean, to be fair, the amount of people I see wanting Billy to come back in the later games and that, or theories saying no, he died in Raccoon City after he escaped, and that he's got an appeal and he could be reused. I mean, there was talk.
He's the bad boy.
He was going to be used for something in one of the later.
I look at you, LadyAshford, when I
CGI films. I think it was.
He's the bad boy. Billy's the bad boy.
Yeah,
It's all about Alfred.
I know there was
Alfred's the bad
talk.
boy.
Yeah,
But I
just,
agree with you.
With a straight face.
Yeah, I just don't see where to go with that one. But it's a possible, but I don't see it happening just yet. I mean, maybe for the 30th anniversary in another few years, but
Yeah.
even then, I mean, we're still pining for a kind of a subtle port or remaster of the original trilogy that I know that keeps getting battered around on social media almost every alternate day nearly. So
For
there
Resident
is
Evil
that
Zero,
as well.
I don't hate the game, by the way. I don't hate it. I think the train section, in my opinion, that's one of my that's a great area in all of Resident Evil. It's one of my favorites. So yeah, it's not a terrible game, but could it use the remake treatment? Sure. Yeah, 100%. It could benefit from that, and item boxes, magical item boxes.
I think that'd be it. You could have that as an option as well. Maybe, I don't know. It's I mean, you could combine both. You could have item boxes and then the option to drop stuff if you don't have the room in your inventory to pick something up and then go put it in the item box once you've got it. I mean, I know it's a bit fiddly, but at least it gives you kind of that happy medium of some realism, but then the unrealism of a magic box.
Okay, sorry. I know Redna, you're gonna kill me, but I've got one more thing to bring up. So, what about the parry system from Resi 4 remake? Do we think that should make a return in another game somehow? Because they did such a great job with it. I can't go back and play the original without it. It's so good.
I reckon it's a possible. I mean, it's one that could carry over to a 5 remake because of the skill set required to parry a projectile flying towards you, which Leon would have been trained to do. And obviously, by that point, Chris is an absolute powerhouse, and he would do the same. I mean, you could do it in 5 potentially, but without the quick time events. You just have to
and Sheva too, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you technically had a sort of parry system in the original 4, but it was just basically shooting objects out of the air, which you could do, but it was
or knifing them.
It wasn't kind of like just a button to press and it did it. But I think parrying is something that needs to be maintained, whether it's like a dodge, like the 3 remake did, which pretty well, or Ethan's kind of counter-attack kind of blocking that he did, which was done pretty good as well. I mean, I didn't really much use of it because after a while you realise that you have enough firepower to just keep shooting or whatever. There's no real kind of need for it sometimes, but in the case of Resident Evil 4, the parry system became very useful, especially for some attacks that you just weren't prepared to shoot for.
Yeah, the whole time I'm just thinking, when you said Ethan, I just can't, it's so funny just thinking about how he defends himself in those games when he just I
mean, I just think when he's doing that, he's thinking, you're leaving your complete lower half to stop someone just kicking you in the balls. I mean, it'd be a funny attack. I mean, just a hunter just swiftly kicking you.
And then he just goes like that.
I mean, I don't know what he'd do. I mean,
to protect his
it's
groin.
hard to do on a webcam.
But I think so too. Like, Lady, did you like the parry system in 4?
I did.
Remake?
I did like that. I don't know. I sort of I was listening then about when you were talking about how 3 had a dodging element, 4 had a parrying element. Maybe. Element.
Maybe he could have like a counter. Like maybe Chris could have a counter like Chris does, or not Chris, Wesker does in that mode, and then he can punch people, and do his thing.
There was an element of that in the original 5 where if you stunned an enemy, you could use Chris's punching ability to knock him back or whatever. So there is that element of counter attacks is probably the way forward from that.
I think they could do that
in Village, in the Mercenaries mode. They added quite a few cool things for Chris in there.
Yeah, maybe limited somehow. Like, I don't know. You'd have to add a bit of stamina to this thing if you're going to do counters, but yeah. Okay, now we move on. Sorry, I kept you.
No, it's all right. I'm just thinking. We've been going for a little while now talking about Resident Evil, but I think it's worth mentioning that we did have the Sony State of Play recently, and we were obviously eagerly waiting any news on Silent Hill 2. So, Ruletime, I'm going to come to you since you're probably one of the biggest fans of Silent Hill out of the 3 of us. And what was your thoughts on the latest kind of footage that we saw? And obviously, the one trivial thing was they still haven't given us a release date yet. So, what was your thoughts on it?
That was disappointing to me that they didn't give us a release date, or you know what, even a release year. If it's not going to come out this year, at least tell us maybe it's going to come out next year or something. But I don't think that's the case. I still think it's going to come out this year because PlayStation had it in their 2024 game lineup, like in a video they put out, and then they've also put it in their 2024 most anticipated games of the year. So I do think that's the case. The trailer, to me, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed at first because of how the combat is in it. But I will say, after watching the trailer a second time and going back through, I really like the atmosphere that they're going for. The puzzles look really good. The game visually looks pretty good. It's just that freaking the gun sound effect, man. I can't get over that. It sounds like a BB gun, like pew, 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 pew. And I'm like, I can't, man. So if it's true that it's still under development, which of course it is, then I hope they fix that. I hope they fix. And Silent Hill has never been known for its combat. I mean, we can admit that if you guys have played the games, of course. So it's not like I'm super mad that the combat's not going to be like Resident Evil levels, but you know, I think that was the thing that kind of made me a little like, ooh. It still looks like it's under development in that aspect, but I've got high hopes for it still. I've got high hopes.
So, yeah, Lady Ashford, can I get your thoughts on the Silent Hill 2 footage that I'm assuming you've seen as well from the state of play? Or what
I was just so glad to finally
get
see
up?
something. Oh, sorry. I was just really, really glad to see something, to be honest. I mean, it looks good. It looks visually beautiful. I love the atmosphere and all of that. I had similar thoughts of the combat, but I was very much. I don't think I paid too much attention to it because, for a similar vein, I find Resident Evil more a survival horror-y type game. I find Silent Hill more psychological horror, and as long as they've done that right, they'll have done the game good. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. What did you think about the combat that you saw?
Me or Retina? Sorry.
Both of you, or one of you. For a lady, what do you think of it?
Go on.
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit. It didn't look very refined. I'm gonna be honest. I'm trying to be careful with my words, but I tried to just. So I didn't pay too much attention to it and just focused on the rest of it that I was really looking forward to.
Yeah. The melee combat looked good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say with the, I mean, I saw the trailer and the footage from the latest showcase of it, and I've got kind of mixed feelings with Silent Hill 2 at the remake at the moment. I mean, I genuinely only played it fully properly last year during a live stream, and I can see why it's so beloved. It's a great game. I mean, for me, obviously, because it was my first time and I'd lost all that time to play it, it did take me a bit of time to get used to as such. But there were elements of it which were genuinely very creepy and horrifying. I love the overall atmosphere of the story. It's one of the few games that's brought me to tears during the credits because of the way it was handled. It was so good. Now, come this remake, the elements of it I enjoyed a great deal. I mean, it was good to see like the hint of Pyramid Head at the very end as he's blurred off in the background. So good to know he's still in there. I mean, some of the creatures still look grotesque. I mean, I don't know what they are exactly, but there's those weird ones that sound like two pieces of polystyrene rubbing together when they move. I mean, that gets under my skin more than anything else in that game. That noise alone I heard in the trailer, that was. Oh god, that was more mortifying, especially when you can't see it in the background or whatever. But it was good. It's scary, but it's also it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's just one of those ones where you absolutely wince and you kind of hold yourself together just to try block out the noise. It's something that Silent Hill's done really well. I think its audio is generally something that's got to me more than its visuals, and apart from the psychological elements as well and the story. But But as you said, the combat, from what I could see, it was. I get it's still probably in development, just to show something's going on with it, and obviously the fact we still haven't got a release date as such is disheartening. But we know that it's got to be coming soon. I mean, they are showing more of it. But when I looked at the combat, I know that from what I played in the original Silent Hill 2, I mean, at the time it wasn't exactly going to be brutal or very hard hitting because of the way it was developed and the year it was released, but I kind of expected the combat of this to have a little bit of impact as such. I mean, I'm not expecting like God of War levels, like, you know, extreme zooms in as you're about to hit someone's head with a 2x4 or whatever, but even the impact of like Ethan's kind of counter kick in Village had more impact than some of those blows that were inflicted upon some of the enemies. And obviously, you mentioned about the audio of the gunshot just sound like a BB gun. I didn't notice that at first, but it did sound a bit off. But again, I put that down to like it being like beta kind of stage kind of gameplay or whatever, so it could be just placeholder audio, hopefully. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen there's loads of cases where we've seen stuff in trailers that doesn't go into the final game or gets changed. I mean,
Resi 4
there
rain.
was- yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. That the rain in Resident Evil 4 was absolutely atrocious. I mean, yeah, the GTA trilogy had the same issue. Something to do with I don't know if it's the kind of the transparency of the rain or something, but you just end up with these white streaks everywhere, and it looks horrific. But I'm hopeful that this is going to look great, but I just don't know what to make of how they're handling it at the moment. I mean, Konami's kind of had all this build. I mean, this isn't the only Silent Hill they've got going. I mean, they've got, what is it, about 4, was it about another 3 or 5 kind of other things that are coming out? We've got that recent 2-hour thing that they came out with recently. I keep forgetting, isn't it Short Memories or something? I mean,
Yeah, the short message that came
yeah,
out.
I mean,
For
the irony of
free.
me not remembering that and saying Memories, which is quite worrying, but
He was probably thinking Shattered Memories, like Silent Hill Shattered Memories on the Wii.
yeah, I was probably thinking that, but there's that, and then isn't Silent Hill F or something like that?
Yeah.
Silent Hill F.
That one
I
I have hope for that one because that one's actually being made by a horror manga.
Yeah, I liked the look of that one. The style of that one got my attention.
I have this manga here, but
there was that interactive story one with the fans getting involved as well. I think there's definitely about
Ascension.
I count 3 to 5 of them that would definitely being worked on. I don't know. It's just weird that you've got all these different projects being worked on at once, but the only one we've really heard from in the last since they were announced is Silent Hill 2 in the most recent months. And even then, it's barely anything.
The disappointing thing for me is like you're a Silent Hill fan, you waited all these years to have a new game, and then the first game you get officially is a mobile game that isn't that great. And then and then you get and then the next game is the short message, which is absolutely free, and it's actually pretty good. So I'm hoping that Konami isn't the same that they used to be, but who knows? Like supposedly, what was it? The build for this that we saw for Silent Hill 2 Remake is like an older build, which I do believe. I actually do believe that because when it says now still in development or whatever at the end of the trailer, it's like that makes sense to me. Like if what we saw there at the State of Play was supposed to be shown last year to us, it's like that makes complete sense because that's telling us that it's still being made. And then if you're going to release the game this year or next year, why no release date? Like, honestly. So, yeah, they definitely got a lot of things to iron out for sure. I don't know what they think over at Konami, but they're also the ones handling the marketing for the game. Bloober's not doing that. And I can tell you guys, like, Bloober, I feel like wants to show us more, but for whatever reason they just can't because Konami's like holding them back from being able to show anything. Not to talk too long, but Dead Space Remake did that really well with how they did it. They're like, oh yeah, we'll show you prototype footage of the game. And they when that game was first announced, they're like, oh yeah, here's how the gunplay is gonna look. Here's how and then this is like a test build that we're putting together. And then they were so transparent about the development of that game from beginning to end that it's like, you didn't have to go far to look for information on Dead Space Remake. It was just right there in front of you.
Yeah, I was actually gonna jump onto Dead Space as well because obviously with the Silent Hill situation, there's not really much else we can say at this point. I mean, it is basically just a brief tease, and we're still in the dark, not just on Silent Hill 2 Remake, but all the others as well, because that's just been quiet. It is worrying, like you said, with the marketing. I mean, we've had, this isn't the only thing that's suffered with that, though. I mean, we obviously, Welcome to Raccoon City suffered from that same situation with its marketing and pushbacks and stuff, but I mean, that's a completely different ballgame, was that one. But with Dead Space, you're right, there was more given as such, and it was probably one of my favourite remakes when that came out. I enjoyed that a great deal. I mean, it was...
Same.
I mean,
One of my favorites.
It had a little bit of the same issue I had with 4, but not to the same extent. It did feel slightly dragged out, but not so much that I wanted to have a long break between playthroughs. But I enjoyed it a great deal. I just... my question is what's going to happen with Dead Space now? Because that's had a bit of a resurgence with this remake, so are they going to continue to remake the remaining 2 games of the trilogy, or are they actually going to try and make a new one? So what do you reckon, Ruletime?
No, they have to at this point. Dead Space 2, I'll be honest, even if they just give us like a upscaled remaster of it or something, and like just made it look like Dead Space remake, cool. Yeah, I'm down, and keep the story the same along with the dialogue. But I've actually spoken to Tanya Clark, why did I say that? The voice actress for Nicole in Dead Space Remake, when I interviewed her, and they recorded, because there's an audio log you can find in the game which mirrors the opening of Dead Space 2, and she's like, yeah, we re-recorded those lines for the game. So I mean, it sounds to me like they probably do have a working framework in mind for Dead Space 2 Remake, and I think it sold well enough for them to do it. I don't see why not. And then finally give us Dead Space 4. Like, do 2, do 3, then give us Dead Space 4, please. Or hell, just go the Resident Evil route. Give us another remake, and then maybe a sequel, and then do the remake of 3 at that point. You know, why not?
I think it's definitely got legs as Dead Space. I mean, obviously multiples of them, depending on how many necromorphs there are, but it's it still has a lot of life in it, and obviously this remake has given it as a resurgence as such. I mean, there was obviously Callisto Protocol that came out a little while ago. I mean, sadly I missed that one, and awkwardly, because of the fan feedback I saw of it being a bit half-baked at times. Some were saying it was fantastic, others were saying that there were some issues with the gameplay or the graphical elements or whatever. That kind of soured me a little bit on it, but I think maybe, obviously the combination of Dead Space Remake and Callisto Protocol has made that kind of horror, sci-fi horror, kind of something that people will latch onto again, and I do hope that we get further with the Dead Space series again, because it does deserve it. It should be up there as some of the best horror series, besides obviously Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark.
100%.
Weirdly, Alan Wake, which I still haven't played the sequel to yet, so I would like to. I mean, this is a bit of a kind of a self-serving moment for me now. I mean, I don't know if both of you have played it yet, but try pitch Alan Wake 2 to me. Give me a reason for it.
Give me a reason. The freaking story, for one. Like, you'll have to play I think the reason to play that game is just for the story. It's wacky. I'll tell you this. It's more Silent Hill. I mean, like, I know people don't like when I use that comparison, but it's the most Silent Hill type game we've ever gotten. And in a good way. And it doesn't clone anything from Silent Hill either, obviously, but it's just so Twin Peaks-like that you just get that feeling, you know?
Yeah, good. So, Lady Ashford, have you ever had a chance to play Alan Wake 2 yet, or are you just like me?
I've got it.
Dark on that one?
I've got it. I loved Alan Wake 1. I replayed Alan Wake 1 recently. Try and refresh my memory of it. So I do have it. I just haven't had 5 minutes to play it yet. So it's on my list. Got so many games on my list to play.
Do it!
Yeah, I've still got to play the first one as well, so I've got to play the entirety of Alan Wake at this point, so I'll definitely get onto that.
Oh yeah, and the developers for that game are fantastic. Like, I've gotten to know Kyle Rowley, who is he was the game director for it. Like, he's just, like, that whole team over there is just passionate and dedicated, and like they love their fans, like, and wholeheartedly. Like, I mean, I've seen them put up NSW or whatever you call it, like, art. Like, they retweet that, and it's like, you know, I don't see big companies like, you know, I love Capcom, but they don't do that. You know, like, Remedy actually loves their fans like with a passion. So it's something that beyond just the games, that company, like, they'll forever be one of my favorites because they just care at the end of the day. Oh, we didn't ask you what you thought of Dead Space remake there, lady. You played it.
Loved it. I absolutely loved it. I hadn't actually played the original before I played the remake, so it was still fresh for me. But yeah, it was quite hard, I thought. But no, I absolutely loved it. The story was gripping. The enemies it was scary. Everything I loved about it. I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to a second one.
Yeah, did you play Dead Space 2 back in the day?
No.
Oh,
Dead
okay.
Space remake was my first.
How could you? One of my
Rebel,
favorite games.
I'd definitely go back. I'd like play the originals for sure.
If you play Dead Space 2, like, you'll see why I say, like, I don't think that they should just do a flat out remake. I mean, I'm cool with it if they just do a flat out remake. I mean, as long as they do it justice, right? But, like, I mean, that game to me is such a perfect sequel to the first game that I don't think you need to do a whole lot to make it, like, you really don't need to do a whole lot to do it. The one thing I've said for years about Dead Space, by the way, guys, sorry, I know I'm taking it over, is I feel like Isaac, like, I don't know if you guys have played the recent Last of Us games, Last of Us Part 2 and Part 1 with the remake there, but they have a bench system in that where, like, and you know, lady, because you've played it, where, like, you upgrade your guns and you actually see your character working on your guns. Like, why can't we have that with Dead Space, where Isaac actually, like, they did a little bit of that in Dead Space 3, but, like, full on, like, it'd be so cool if you, like, attach things to his guns and, like, upgraded his weapons as you're going throughout it. Like, they need to go that route, and they need to keep the Iron Man like feel to the suits, please. When he puts on the helmet in Dead Space 2, it's like, oh, there's no, like, that's a badass, so badass.
They did a great job with the remake, especially. But Dead Space 2 as a remake would be an interesting one to see. I mean, I've played it up to a point. I still need to properly finish it, but I mean, with obviously the biggest improvement they made with that Dead Space remake was how the Zero-G worked. I know it inherited it from, like, Dead Space 2's kind of
Fast
way of
change.
controlling it.
Fast change.
Because I remember it being an absolute pain in the original Dead Space. Well, not unplayable,
you had to,
but
like,
it was
look at a
pretty
ceiling
awkward.
and, like, Superman jump to it.
You'd jump to specific points, and you'd have to. It was like going from path to path point, but you could move to where you wanted, but you were very restrictive in how you couldn't just change in midair like you could.
Yeah.
And, I'm assuming the dog just attacked Lady Ashford's webcam.
Oh no! Oh no!
I don't know what's happened here. I've just got this vision of the dog running off with the webcam in its mouth right now. I'm kind of.
Oh no, lady! What happened? Are you okay?
I don't know, but I'm enjoying myself right now. This is really me.
Oh no! Oh no! Lady, give us two. Just tell us you're okay. You're not getting robbed.
No, I'm more worried about the dog. What's doing?
Oh no!
We'll give her a sec to sort herself out.
But yeah, like the changes they did in Dead Space remake are you okay? Are you okay, lady?
Yeah. Zog just threw the laptop on the floor.
Oh,
fine.
Oh fuck!
I thought it was broken. I was like, oh my god, what's happened?
You gotta turn the camera. We can't see your cool resi stuff.
I have to sort it out. Yeah, the stand for it's on the floor now.
Don't worry about it.
Oh shit! You. Oh, now.
Poor little guy. But going back to I think Dead Space remake is an example of how to do a remake right. Like, they took the first game, they did so many things right with it, like the Zero-G. They brought in the original voice actors, not the original voice actor for Kendra or Hammond, but they brought in the original voice actress for Nicole from Dead Space 2. Like, that's how you do it, in my opinion. Like, it doesn't get higher than that level of quality, and it's like they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, they do
And
a
I can
great
see why
job.
they're making an Iron Man game off that too, because that
Yeah,
zero G section does feel like you're Iron Man. So
they've definitely got. There's a recurring thing where something they've done in the current game they've just released is going to allow them to experiment and then be reused for other games. Like, I mean, obviously we've treaded this ground already with
Yeah.
Resident Evil, so I'm not going to go over it again. But that's
Yeah,
the
right,
thing they've
right.
done with it. But yeah, obviously with Dead Space, the zero G thing when it was originally used for Dead Space 2, and that particular control scheme was very old by the time it came to this remake. It was what 2000 and
10.
I'm trying to remember when 2 came out. 2010. Yeah,
Yeah,
so over
2000.
over
Or
what, 12
11
years?
actually.
Yeah, so about 12, 11 years since that.
Hold on, I'm a real Dead Space fan. Give me a second.
Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely over a decade, I'm sure, since
Yeah,
that was
it
applied.
was.
So it just shows that it's a case
2011.
of it's not broke, they'll fix it, or in this case, if it is broke, steal it from the other game. Which
Yeah, I mean,
definitely worked.
100. Yeah, and I didn't. You know what? I remember thinking about that when I got to Dead Space 2. I was like, it was such a great change. It's like, why don't they just bring it back to the remake if they do one? Because I remember hearing about the remake, and I was like, God, I hope they do that. Oh, and they added the kinesis from 2 as well, like where you could pick up objects, like sharp objects, and then hurl them at enemies. That wasn't in the original.
Was that the thing they also used it for that mini game with the balls and the zero G kind of basketball thing as well?
They still had that in the original.
Oh, right, yeah.
They still had that where the kinesis ball, you could, throw it in. Like, they kept that from the original, but obviously the thing that changed was the zero G. Because in that one you were like, a little platform, like looking up at the ball, and then like, but in that one you're floating and like, yeah.
Yeah. So just to. I'm aware we have been talking for quite a while now, but I want to just touch upon one final thing before we wrap up for the night, which is if there's any kind of indie stuff that anyone's come across that's worth noting that we should be keeping an eye on. I mean, the only one I can think of on my end was my recent contact with someone who gave me a review code for a game called Partum Artifacts. And
Yeah.
it seems to be more of a puzzle-based kind of horror rather than relying on gunplay in that. And from what I've played so far, it's pretty good, and I'm hoping to get a review of it up here on the channel when I've finished and I've got some more to show for it, because I don't just want to run it quickly and just say, all right, this is what I think of this. I want to really kind of take it in. And my only quick problem with this game, which is just a personal one for me, is on the main menu it says to start the game it says begin the creative process, and then to quit the game it says quit being a creative. And I thought, spiteful little gits. That's
Quit being a
yeah, just
I love that.
Quit being a creative. I'm like, fuck, give up on life, thank you. But it's genuinely, it's an intriguing game. I would recommend it. Partum Artifacts, if you can find it. It's up on Steam at the moment, I think.
Go
But
check it
I'm
out.
going through my playthrough and that. So, Ruletime, I'll just come to you. Is there anything that it's come up on your radar recently that you think we should be looking at?
Indie wise or game wise?
Well, ideally indie wise, but anything that you think that might be worth looking at, maybe in the horror aspect of stuff. Completely up to you.
I feel like there was this one game, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like you're like in a hazmat suit going through the forest, and there's this giant snake following you. That one to me looks pretty interesting. I mean, it looks a little wacky, but I'm cool with that. Like, it looks. I like the way it's presented, and the fact that a giant snake is chasing after you just makes me want to play it even more. And that's. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't really like keep up with the indie scene too much. I mean, I played Dredge recently, which was really good. Signalis, obviously, it was an amazing indie survival horror game. But there hasn't been too many that have been popping up on my radar, and I'm going to check out the one that you mentioned too, by the way.
Okay. Lady Ashford, have you got any thoughts on like the indie kind of scene or just horror gaming scene in general outside of the big three that we've mentioned today?
Not so much on the indie front, but definitely one that's interesting, well, for me anyway. And I'm not sure if you class it as horror. I do. I think it's a very good psychological kind of horror element to it anyway. That's Hellblade 2. I only played the first one recently, and honestly, it took my breath away. I can't say a bad thing about it. I played it, and then I played it literally like twice over straight afterwards again.
I forgot about
and I know
Hellblade 2.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was saying I forgot about Hellblade 2.
Is it May it's coming out?
Yeah, May.
I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it's only on. 'Cause I normally play everything on PlayStation, and I don't think it's out on PlayStation. But I'm definitely going to find a way to see it at least, or play it, because it's intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May
There's,
May 21st it comes out this year.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, because I mean, I came to the whole first Hellblade game quite late, but it's one of the few games where I started wearing headphones to play it, and then I had to stop and had to play it with normal sound, because the idea
When
of
it gets in
someone
your ear.
talking in my ear, it's when I could hear one kind of talking to me kind of from my front temple about here, but then another one behind my left ear at the same time.
Ugh.
That is extremely disorientating, and I mean, I've had some
Gives me
experiences
creep,
of knowing people with like psychosis and dealing with the visions that Senua has in that game, and obviously the voices in some way, and kind of the delusional aspect of it, and that was it does give you a really good kind of idea of what it's like. I mean, the amount of research they put into that game for the first one especially was fantastic, and the lady who plays Senua, Melissa Jurgens, I think it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, Millie Jurgens, I keep getting the name mixed up. Sorry, she was their videographer at Ninja Theory, and she was she was supposed to be the stand-in. She wasn't supposed to be the main actress, but she was just so good at doing the emotive qualities of Senua and embodied the character so perfectly that they kept her on, and she's really lovely person. Man. She's done incredible work, and I think it can't be downplayed just how good Hellblade is in general, not just for that and its visual quality with the technology they use to capture all the textures and that and the look, but it's just such a well-written game, and it's one of the few I've seen that still makes use of filmed actors for some of the visions, like I think it was Droog or something, one of the visions that she has, the guy in the old kind of like all the
outfit,
bones and fur and that, so they just filmed actual people for that, and that's like quite a rarity in the games. Yeah, I love that. It's rare you get that kind of full-on live-action video in a game these days now. I mean, outside the
Alan Wake 2
stuff we've seen. Oh yeah, Hellblade 2 should be good.
Alan Wake 2 has that live-action stuff, just saying.
Well, I mean, that, and to me, whenever I think like full-motion videos with live actors, I think Command & Conquer as well.
Or Resident Evil 1, the original.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the obvious choice. I mean, there was the homage to it in the 3 remake, which I feel like never gets mentioned. The fact they did a live action intro for that.
They actually did. Yeah. But I agree. So Hellblade 2, completely forgot about that game. That looks incredible.
I think it doesn't help that Microsoft seems to have a stranglehold on that IP at the moment, and I'm going to probably have to wait until it becomes cross-platform again. But
no physical release either, and I also heard Microsoft got rid of their whole physical department that just handles physical releases in general. So it's like that, like because of that, I feel like that hurts it, and I've wondered why people aren't very hyped for it. But I kind of get it at the same time. It's like, you know. I mean, it looks incredible. That does not detract away from their work whatsoever. But you know,
the physical kind of digital debate is ongoing, and we could lose another 2 hours just talking about that at least. But
yeah, we could.
I mean, Hellblade 2 is definitely good. It's the I mean, the only thing I can think of is obviously. As usual, there's always the cry for Dino Crisis to come back again, and I'm not going to get into the Dino Crisis remake talk because we can save that for another chat, because that deserves a full hour at least. So, but there is some good kind of alternative options until we get that inevitable remake eventually. Hopefully, until Exoprimal becomes too boring for people.
Well, it's 25 years old this year, by the way.
Yeah. So there is the opportunity for something to happen, but there are other options out there. Like, I mean, there's a good one I played, which was much more kind of hiding from dinosaurs constantly, called Oakwood, which was a good one to look out for.
Yeah.
And then there is another one that's still yet to be released called Paleophage, which is...
I remember that.
That's much more of a kind of a Resident Evil 4 style with Dino Crisis dinosaur elements in it, so that could be one to look out for. So keep an eye out for that one.
And the Jurassic Park game that's going to come out.
Yeah, it's just there is a thing
for
dinosaurs at the moment. Yeah, there's a huge thing for dinosaurs at the moment. I mean, obviously the Jurassic Park Jurassic World series helped revitalise it somewhat. I mean, that's going to get a 4th film apparently. There's there is so much going on with dinosaurs. They are still part of the imagination. I mean, we've got. I mean, we're only just getting to the point where superhero games are starting to get popular again. Obviously, with Spider-Man and all that, and obviously Marvel and DC are doing their thing in the film industry, and now this is getting popular again in the game industry. So, what's to say the same can't happen with like dinosaur games? I mean, I know Exo Primal's kind of a more wacky one because we did get kind of a bit, and some was thinking it was going to be Dino Crisis with the red-haired character possibly being Regina, but
and just to go to that for a second, I do think that game was going to be a Dino Crisis game at one point. And then I'm pretty sure Capcom was like, nah, because this game, people will hate this game if we do a Dino Crisis thing, so we'll just call it something different and not connect it to that.
If it was to possibly save the IP from being dragged through the mud before it reaches the 3rd game again, then if it gave it that chance to have a fresh start, but then experiment with this to see how it would work. I mean, it's visually, I like it. You've got the good dinosaur elements in there, but it just
the T-Rex.
It wasn't the right kind of style of game to work for Dino Crisis because, to be honest, it was just basically Colosseum mode from Dino Crisis 2, but ramped up to 10 with some robotic suits as well.
They definitely, I have a feeling that they definitely wanted to go that far and be like, oh, this is Dino Crisis. So I feel like they do have, like, Capcom, and we could talk about it another day, but I do feel like Capcom's ready for that series to come back again in some way.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You think so too, lady?
Sorry.
I'd like it. I think we should.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think considering all we've covered, and before we start going on for another hour about the Dino Crisis franchise, I think we best wrap it up there. First off, thank you both for joining us tonight and having this, overrunning discussion because we have gone over by about nearly half an hour. But it's been a lot of fun. We've got a lot off our chests. I mean, some of it's going to be pent up aggression over yellow paint. Some of it's going to be about the fact that we can't use a fire extinguisher properly. And some of it's going to be
sorry.
and they're the moths as well. They're in there. I'm not talking about the officers from Star Wars, but yeah, they're just as bad.
I love the game, lady. I love the game.
Yeah, but it's been good to record this on the 24th anniversary of Code Veronica, talking about that a lot. Our thoughts on what we think the future of Resident Evil and other survival horror franchises is going to be. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really thankful to have you both here. It's been great to have both of you part of this group.
Thank you. This was great. Yeah, I know. Hopefully, I didn't talk your guys' ear off, but appreciate it.
No, we got some words in the way, and to be honest, the dog interrupted the laptop to get our attention as well. That was a big help.
Oh, that was scary.
Thanks, dog.
Just flew off the thing. I was like, oh no. It's following the dog round the corner.
He's the unofficial 4th member now.
Yeah.
He's the moderator of our chat, so we don't go too far. He just rips the laptop with his legs.
He's like, you're done. You're done.
Yeah. We've had enough of this Alan Wake shit. Come on. Okay.
Thank you, man.
So, so that was our very first revitalised kind of podcast episode. I hope you've enjoyed this tonight. I've been Retina Prime. We'll say goodbye to Lady Ashford.
Bye.
And we'll say goodbye to Ruletime.
Bye for now.
And you'll say goodbye from me. I've been Retina Prime, and I'll see you all next time.